Hello and welcome to the Art of Fundraising. I'm Paul Sheldon, the founder of Dreamosophy. Dreamosophy literally means the wisdom of dreaming. And over the years, I've noticed that many people get hung up in the realization of their heartfelt dreams with getting enough money. I got interested in wisdom of dreaming and the realization of dreams more than 50 years ago, because I came from a family of social change activists. One of my earliest memories was going down to the harbor in San Pedro, California, to watch a ship called the Golden Rule sail out to sea. They were going to sail into the nuclear test zone in the South Pacific to protest above ground testing. So that was kind of my beginning. And I've always tried to stay engaged in what in the Jewish community is called tikkun olam. And as today is Yom Kippur, it's a good day to think about what can we do to heal the world. I'd like to invite just a few people. I don't think we'll have time for everybody, but if a few people would like to just introduce yourself, say where you're from, and what is it that interests you about the art of fundraising, give you a chance to get present in this electronic dream stream that we have going on here. You can just unmute yourself and speak up.
Mike, go ahead. I'm David Wick. I'm here in Ashland with a number of you. Hi, great to see you all. And I'm executive director of the Ashland Cultural Peace Commission, as well as president of Pathways to Peace. I've been very involved with fundraising of various forms and many years, and interested in new possibilities and new thinking. So, and I think you've got some, Paul.
Why don't you use your laptop if you want your space on you, or just sit and listen.
And if you're not intentionally unmuted, please mute when you're not speaking.
It says
Thanks, David.
Microphone on our side. So maybe you want that one because it can. Should I turn it on?
Oh, goody. Do I get to call on people?
I'll speak up. Hi, I'm Linda Rapond, and I'm here as part of the Resource Development Committee for the Center for Spiritual Living in Medford. There's several of us here.
Ah, wonderful. Any other Center for Spiritual Living folks want to raise your hands? Great, thank you. Lovely to have you.
I'll speak up, Paul. I'm interested in this Glenn Hallam, raising money for University Climate Ambassadors. I'm interested in how you make it natural with people and kind of overcome the barriers. People don't like being hit up for money, and I don't like hitting people up for money either. So how do you do this in a way that's more natural and kind of respectful of the people around you who are in a position to help?
Thank you for your clarity, Glenn. Yes, we will definitely address that this week. Kathleen?
I'm a retired special ed teacher. I don't know anything about fundraising. We've passed bond issues when we needed money. And so I'm a total beginner's mind here, and fill it up. Thank you.
Great. Beginner's mind is a wonderful place to be. One more?
Well, my name's Abby. I'm the founder of Golden Rule Reentry. We work with the formerly incarcerated, and I have the pleasure and honor of working directly with Paul. So I'm interested in taking a look under the hood, as it were.
I'm going to reveal all my trade secrets to you this week, Abigail. You won't need me anymore. I'd like to begin this morning telling you a little bit about my particular orientation towards fundraising. Because people think that fundraising is about asking for money, and of course it is, but that's not the only way to generate the money and the resources needed to realize a dream. So I'm going to give you a little retrospective into how I got to where I am and how I ended up focusing on fundraising as an important aspect of the realization of dreams. Dreamosophy is a unique process for dreaming up a life worth giving. And what I mean by that is that some people are focused very intently on their personal lives, and that's wonderful. If your purpose in life is to be a parent or to take care of your parents or to make a household that is supportive to the people who live in it, and you're not interested in raising money, good on you. Congratulations, because you don't have to take on this larger or more pressured arena of how do we get the money to do what we want. But many of us have been guided by life, by the dream stream, have found ourselves taking on projects that are larger than ourselves. And oftentimes we need to get money for that. I was called upon in 1970 to help raise money to end smog in Los Angeles. We found out that the forests around Los Angeles were dying because of the smog. And when we tried to talk with people about smog, they weren't very concerned about that the smog was killing the children. I remember in Southern California going out to play tennis in the afternoons, and my lungs just ached, like in the Rogue Valley this week with the smoke, where I didn't know what to do about it, but I didn't think it was right. And so when we found out that the forest was dying, when we started talking with people about trees and how smog is killing the trees, they were very concerned about saving the forest. So we took on a 25-year goal to end smog in Los Angeles by 1995. We failed. But along the way, we planted 2 million trees, and I was called upon to do the fundraising, to get the money, the tools, the food for crews of people up in the forest. And about 7 or 8 years into that, I was able to take a course at UCLA on the art of fundraising. And during that course, I met a man named Irving R, who wrote the book, The Art of Fundraising. And I became his student and his assistant for several years. And he taught me a very unique approach to fundraising. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes, but I just want to touch on some of the other organizations that I've helped along the way. In the early 1980s, we literally created the Rocky Mountain Institute out of conversations around a dining room table. My mother was a fundraiser. She was very good at writing proposals and at developing relationships with major donors. And for several years, we sat around her dining room table. My older sister, Hunter Lovins, and her husband, Amory, and I argued about what can we do to address energy, water, land use, national defense, and all the links among those things. Bucky Fuller was around then. We lived just down the road from WinStar Foundation. And Bucky Fuller used to talk about a world that works for everyone. And we wanted to participate in calling forth a world that works for everyone. So we started the Rocky Mountain Institute as a think and do tank that was designed to address energy, water, land use, national defense, and the links among those things. That's been very successful. I think they're up to several $1 million a year. They've moved down to Boulder now. But Jimmy Carter was very supportive. Bill Clinton declared natural capitalism. The book came out of RMI, The Next Industrial Revolution. And that was a big challenge. About 15 years ago, a horseshoer in Colorado challenged me. I was working on green jobs with Walmart, how to create green jobs. And this horseshoer said, there's one group of people that aren't going to get green jobs, and that's people who've been incarcerated. People who've been in prison and jail. They're not going to qualify for any jobs, let alone green jobs. And if you really believe in what you're talking about, you'll do something about creating green jobs for formerly incarcerated people. So I took him seriously. And over the last 15 years, I've done a lot of work in that area of reentry, of how do we use the time of incarceration as an opportunity to dream up a life worth giving. as an opportunity to learn some identity other than gangs and drugs and being exploited by the system. I eventually joined the board of a little group in Oakland called Planting Justice, which started out in the founder's bedroom, just like the Tree People, and was creating jobs for formerly incarcerated people to transform yards into food gardens, to transform lawns into permaculture food forests. And we've been very successful at Planting Justice. We started out at San Quentin, bringing people coming out of the Insight Garden program at San Quentin back into West Oakland and helping them learn the skills necessary to help people transform their yards. When I got involved, the annual budget was up to about $250,000 a year. This year, the budget's going to be about $6 million a year. And Planting Justice just received the first $2.5 million payment on a $5 million pledge from the wife of the founder of Netflix. So it can happen. And sometimes it gets to be kind of like trying to catch up to a train. I just got off a call this morning with a group called Social Profit Corrections that's working to end private prisons in America. They don't feel that it's appropriate to be gaining profit from the incarceration of human beings. And so they're working on a model they call dynamic corrections, which starts with treating the staff with dignity and respect and helping the staff learn to treat incarcerated people with dignity and respect. Social Profit Corrections, after 4 years, is starting to make the arc. They just received their first $2 million pledge, the first payment of $1 million from a billionaire that they met through the endless chain of referrals, which we'll talk more about in a little while. And then one of my favorite organizations that I've worked with over the last decade is the Laura X Institute. Laura X is 82 now. She found out in 1969 that in 46 states in the United States, it was legal for a husband to rape his wife. The rape laws specifically exempted husbands from the definition of rape. And in 13 states, social companions were exempted from the definition of rape. So if someone went out to dinner, that meant that the man could not be prosecuted for rape, no matter what happened after that. She didn't think that was right. So Laura X took on the project of eliminating those exemptions in the rape laws. It took her 25 years. She went state by state by state, recruiting victims, lawyers, legislators, judges, nonprofit organizations. She would go to college campuses and show a film and then start a discussion group and pass out leaflets and get people active. And the last state was South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken, in 1993. So it took her 25 years to eliminate those exemptions. And Joe Biden thanked her as the source of his work on the Violence Against Women Act nationally. He acknowledged her as the standard bearer for that movement. Along the way, her friend Susan Brown Miller coined the term date rape. And so for many years, Laura was the executive director of the National Clearinghouse on Marital and Date Rape in Berkeley. And she kept records. She's not a hoarder, she's an archivist. So her house was piled high with papers and flyers and records of all the things that she had done. She had 600 boxes of materials documenting this campaign for 25 years. And she was also involved in 22 other social movements. So we raised about $5 million to catalog all of the materials that had been in her house. We moved the materials to St. Louis and hired staff to organize and catalog. And most of that material is now at the University of Houston, although it's also scattered around at Harvard and Berkeley and the New York Historical Society and a number of other institutions around the country that have been fortunate enough to get her materials on date rape and femicide and that sort of thing. So that's just kind of a broad brushed, very fast overview of some of the projects that I've worked on over the last 50 years of being committed to helping people raise the money to realize their dreams. Along the way, I picked up master's degree and a bachelor's degree in human development. And I studied how people's lives change when they have a dream to live for that's bigger than themselves. One of the pivotal elements in that is how do we get the money to do what we want to do? out of studying with Irving Warner back in the 1970s, professional fundraising consultants, when they worked on a major campaign of $1 million or more, for example, did what was called a feasibility study. Before setting out to raise money, they would study whether or not you could be successful raising money. Because if you're a hospital or a college or a school seeking to raise money to build a building, one of the worst things that can happen is to set out to raise money and fail. And so doing a feasibility study first was very prudent. Unfortunately, a lot of those feasibility studies got bound in nice 3-ring binders or folders and put on a shelf, and not much happened. And the whole concept of a feasibility study was kind of delegitimized within the fundraising community, because you can't predict what's going to happen. And people found that they weren't all that useful. But what I did learn with Irving was this question approach. And so I'm going to give you an insight today that could shift your perspective. And what I mean by that is there are certain kinds of knowledge and certain effects on your point of view that shift how you see the world. And I'll just give a couple of examples. Some of you have heard of Sean Parker, who started Napster, and he met Mark Zuckerschmuck. Sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't appreciate what he's done with his wealth. But in the early days of the Facebook, which started out as the mashup at Harvard, and in those of you who've seen The Social Network know the history there, he was promoting the Facebook as a way for people to look at pictures of each other and find out about each other. And he went to Sean Parker and he said, "What do I need to do to grow Facebook?" And Sean said, "Drop the." Now, one might think that's a stupid little marketing trick, but in fact, it pivoted how Facebook is perceived in the world, because from the Facebook, they became Facebook, and it shifted. There's an apocryphal story that's probably not true about the evolution of Coca-Cola, which originally was sold in soda fountains behind a bar with a water tap, a canister of CO2, and Coke syrup, which at that time contained cocaine. And somebody walked into the headquarters in Atlanta and said to them, "Bottle it." And nobody had ever done that with a popular drink before. And it may have pivoted the course of Coca-Cola. More importantly, before Pasteur, we didn't really know about germs. Surgeons didn't wash their hands. People thought that tuberculosis was caused by unrequited love. There were humors in the body. And if you were sick, one of the things that had to happen was you had to be bled. They had to drain blood. That's why barbershops have red and white spirals outside their doors. People thought that they had to drain the blood from the body in order to get rid of illness. But when Pasteur discovered germs, hygiene took a whole different turn, and surgeons started washing their hands, and we have sanitation as a result. And now we take for granted that germs exist and they correlate to disease. And there's all kinds of debate in the last 5 years about how strongly and what's causal. We won't get into that today, but that shifted people's perspectives. And so knowing something can change how you view the world. A construction worker who understands how a roof is supported can see things in a building that people who don't know about construction don't see. Dentists can see people in a different way because they know what goes on with teeth and tooth decay, and on and on. So in fundraising, I would like to share with you a subtle distinction. And we'll talk more about the 7 questions later in the week. But what I learned from Irving Warner is something that was encapsulated by a phrase that I first heard from Jim Rohn. And the phrase was, "Be interested, not interesting." And what that means is, in order to raise money, we have to find out what people care about and help them take care of what they care about. It's not about telling our story. One of the first things Irving Warner ever said to me was, if case statements raise money, there would be no more starving children. In other words, it doesn't matter how urgent and righteous the cause that you're raising money for is, if you're not able to connect with people who can support that work and find out what they care about and help them take care of what they care about. So I'll say one more time, be interested, not interesting. And that means that the focus of our conversations is going to shift over the course of your interaction with the art of fundraising, such that you now have an opportunity to be interested in the people around you. We'll talk more later in the week about asking for money. And my advice about asking for money is don't. Because it makes the whole conversation awkward. And it makes the person who is being asked for money feel like they're being manipulated or taken advantage of. They become an object of manipulation rather than a friend with whom you have concerns in common. Now, that's a crass and oversimplified approach, but it is not necessary to ask people for money when you care about what they care about, because they can identify what in Dreamosophy we call a confluence, the flowing together of shared dreams for the future. We'll talk more about this as we go along, but I just want to say that what you're going to learn this week is an approach called the 7 questions. And of course, each of the questions can become many questions. But the point is that you're going to shift your conversations with prospective supporters from telling them about your wonderful project, which will happen, to asking them about what they care about. Every cocktail conversation pivots around who's asking questions. And in sales, they say the person who asks the questions controls the conversation. I don't think that's necessarily true. But when you are able to develop a repertoire of questions to ask people that goes beyond icebreakers, that goes beyond niceties, that actually delves more deeply into what do people really care about, then how to accomplish tasks and projects in the world is a natural development out of people talking about what they care about, because people love to talk about what they care about, especially when you ask them about it. And then you get to stand shoulder to shoulder together, looking together at a world that needs what we have to offer, and work together to create what Bucky Fuller called a world that works for everyone, what I call a life worth giving. And these questions become like doorways, like gates into the Garden of Dreams, archways, topics. Each question is an opportunity to explore an aspect of what people care about. And that shifts the conversation from trying to get people to give money to caring about what they feel is important in life. And then listening for commonalities. What are we doing that responds to what you care about? What are you doing that could help with what we care about? Those kinds of conversations are much more fun than asking people for money. And what I've found over the years is that the largest gifts come from people who are not asked for money. They offer the money because they discover in what you're doing a match between what they care about and you doing something that they couldn't do on their own. Because everybody who takes on a project that's larger than themselves knows, I can't do this myself. I met Ted Turner once. He had just pledged $10 billion to the United Nations, $1 billion a year for 10 years, and it wasn't enough. People who have resources tend to take on projects that are bigger than they are. And so one of the reasons that it's so important to have peers asking peers for contributions is that they're going to come back around next year and ask you to support their project. So these doorways into the Garden of Dreams are opportunities to share at a heart-centered level, to discover What is it that we both care about that we can do together? So I'm going to pause there for a few minutes and invite people to comment on what I've just talked about. How does this sit with you? What does this provoke in you, this shift that we're talking about? And you can just unmute yourself, or you can put your hand up if you like.
Makes a lot of sense what you're saying. And it does make everybody more comfortable, even common ground. So
Yeah. And it's one of those simple things that now that you know it, well, you knew that already. That was obvious. That it fits into the background conveniently. But it allows the opportunity to open up a conversation with someone about what they care about and to find out more about what they care about. You're not just trying to get to somebody so you can ask them for money, but you're trying to open a conversation with someone about what they care about. If they're involved in starting a farm or building low-income housing or working for world peace or creating outdoor experiences that allow people to get in touch with nature, the purpose of exploring conversations is to get to that level of talking with people about what they care about. Someone else? Yeah, Karen?
It's interesting because I've always had it that I'm bothering people. I don't
Yes.
like to bother people.
Yes.
Really a big thing with me.
Yeah.
And so this is opened up already. I mean, just saying, you're asking questions about what they're interested in. That turns it around, the whole thing around for me. So this is really great. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you. David?
Well, I totally agree. And having a comfortable conversation rather than the ask, is wonderful. It seems to me then the critical question is, who do you want to be in a conversation with? Is finding the right people
Yes.
rather than spending a lot of time elsewhere.
Yeah, it really puts attention on background research, on finding out with whom you're speaking and who is introducing you to that person and how. We'll talk about that more as the week goes on. But, the old stereotype is, which of course graduates object to, but they used to say Harvard is about what you know and Yale is about who you know. It's actually kind of true. I mean, it's important that you know your stuff, that you be able to talk about what it is that you're working on, but it's much more important in fundraising to know with whom are you speaking and what do they care about? What have they funded in the past? What are they stuck on that they have money waiting to invest if somebody just knew a way to deal with this? That's where Social Profit Correction's $2 million gift from Arnold Ventures came from. Arnold Ventures, backed by the billionaire that started it, and owns it. And he's really concerned about mass incarceration and doesn't know what to do about it. Ted Turner was really concerned about the United Nations, wanted to make it work. Alice Walton got very concerned about extinction of species in Central America and just needed somebody to do something about it. Zoe Maldonado. I like Sun Zoe also. As your...
I just wanted to say that with what you're saying, I like the shift in focus from like getting and achieving to rather like this sense of mutual cooperation and like actual authentic intimacy building, like building real relationships with people.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Now, I will say one thing. It's really important that you are sincere in your interest. If you're not interested in what other people care about, if you're just trying to get money for your project, you're going to choose a different approach than the one that I'm talking about. And there are lots of people out there who just unabashedly ask for money for what they care about and are highly successful. I just don't resonate with that approach, because my entire life I've been fascinated by people who care passionately about the world, who do stuff. And so I love to talk with them about that, to find out about what it is that they're doing. I'll just give two examples. In the United States, we're told not to talk about religion at the dinner table because it gets people upset. In Tibet, it's exactly the opposite. And now I've never been to Tibet, but I've talked with quite a few people who have, and they say Tibetans can't wait to talk about spirituality. They like rush to get through the food so they can start talking about spirituality. Another example is I love Bulgarian dancing. I've been to Bulgaria a number of times. I spent most of the summer there last year. And 30 years ago, I was in a little village in Bulgaria up in the mountains above the Black Sea. And I had met some people from that village on a prior trip, and they had invited me to visit their village. And we went up into the hills to this ancient spring. It was a pre-Christian spring that's like the mikvah at the well springs here in Ashland, where it had been used in prehistoric times as a baptismal font to wash people's impurities away. And they sponsored this picnic. We were sitting around eating watermelon and bread and cheese and different wonderful local foods. And as we finished the meal, there's maybe 30 or 40 people sitting around this big table. I felt this tension rising. It was like people were kind of sitting forward, and they were tense. They were physically tense. And finally, someone started singing, and the whole table erupted in harmonious song. And I could feel that what they were waiting for was the opportunity to sing and dance. And so for the next 20 or 30 minutes, we sang and danced around the table near this baptismal font that nobody understands the mystery of that, but they were waiting for the opportunity to sing. And when that finally emerged, it was a different gathering. And many of us are still in communication with each other 30 years later. So what is it that people are waiting to talk about? That's what you want to get to in the discovery process of developing a relationship with someone who's going to be your supporter. And I will cultivate relationships with people for years. I'm really not interested in getting their money. I'm interested in finding out what they care about and getting to a point where they say, hey, this is something that I really care about. How do we make this happen? Someone else? Oh, we have all these shy people. Do I get to call on people?
I could say something, Paul.
Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, it takes a certain person, I'd say, to be interested, especially in what everybody cares about, because we still have an intention regarding what we care about. So let's say there's a person who cares. I care about making prisons a more humane place, and having the people who come out have the experience that they can fit into society and live normal lives. And well, there's the issue about finding people who care about that. But even on this call that you're on with me, that I have, there's like, people don't always care about what you care about. So I guess the issue is you really have to be curious and open and really care, like you said, about people, because if people care about something different, how do you deal with that? It's because it's not what you care about. I'll leave it at that as a question.
Yeah, and I thank you for the opening to speak to that. My older sister has raised many millions of dollars for various causes, and she's very crass. she's a cowboy. People say, oh, you mean she's a cowgirl? No, she's a cowboy. Her idea of a good time is to go down to the county fairgrounds on Tuesday nights and rope calves, or to go to the horse sale. And she's really quite crass about her priorities and what she does. And so she says, never teach a pig to sing. It's a waste of your time, and it annoys the pig. So if people aren't interested in what you're interested in, there's a wonderful phrase that is something like, God bless you, go in peace. And there's a lovely phrase in Fiddler on the Roof where Rev Tevye says, God bless and keep the czar far away from us. You don't have to get money from everybody you talk to. If the sense that you get is this person is not interested in what we're doing, ask them for referrals and move on. Now, there are many hard pressure fundraisers who tell me that I'm walking away from money on the table. Maybe that's true. There are people who enjoy manipulating or forcing or inspiring or persuading people to give money to something that where they started out with at an impasse. But it's just not my style. So let me talk a little bit about this, because what I'm offering you this week is a unique approach that works for some people in some circumstances. It's not the only approach to fundraising. So I'm not here to say celebrity golf tournaments don't work, or benefit auctions don't work, or writing proposals to get government grants doesn't work. Of course, all those things work. I just don't resonate with them. So I'm not saying you shouldn't use any other approach to fundraising. There's a book called Grassroots Fundraising that's all about how do you get small gifts from a lot of people. Barack Obama changed the world because his campaign developed a network of people that would give $1 or $2 or $20 and raised hundreds of millions of dollars by doing that. It's wonderful if you can do that. I just don't have the time and resources to do that. So I'd rather get one gift of $1,000 than 100 gifts for $10. Now, if we can do both, that's the best of all worlds. Now, why do I focus on this? It's pretty simple. The statistics have not changed in the 50 years that I've been involved in fundraising. In the United States, 85% of charitable giving comes from individuals. It's not government grants, it's not foundation grants, it's not corporate sponsorships, it's individuals. Now, buried in there are individuals who happen to sit on foundation boards or who happen to own corporations that are philanthropic with some of their cash flow, but it's the individuals that arrange the gifts. And of those gifts, of all the gifts, 85% of giving goes to religion, spiritual practices, education, the alma mater, places that people went to school, and healthcare, where the hospital that saved Aunt Elma's life deserves a gift. So if you're not raising money for a church or a synagogue or a mosque or an established religion, and you're not raising money for healthcare, and you're not raising money for education for a school or college or a university, you're looking after 15% of 15%. And I saw a wonderful sign on the picket line watching about the, we hope, impending resolution of the writers' strike. One of the picketers had a sign that said, we're asking for 2% from the 1%. I remember when we were lobbying on behalf of farm workers in California back in the 1970s, and we had identified table grapes as one of the areas that we might have some leverage to get better wages and treatment for farm workers. And someone calculated that doing everything that the farm workers needed, putting bathrooms in the fields and giving them breaks and paying them a better wage, would add 1 penny to the price of table grapes. So those of us who are fundraising for alternative opportunities are going after a very, very small segment of the money. And once again, I'm not saying you shouldn't write proposals to get grants. By the way, people seeking money do not write grants. They write proposals. People who have money give grants. So there's a grant writer is somebody who works for a funder writing contracts about where the money is going to go. A proposal writer asks for money, but I digress. What we're doing here is we're opening up opportunity around the edges where there was very little possibility. And the opportunity is to engage in conversations that lead to the possibility that money can be raised. We're creating the context within which money can be raised. And it might take place in one conversation. I remember going to see Randy Compton, who was the president of the Compton Foundation. His parents started his grandparents started Ralston Purina in St. Louis. Ron Gauss, you might want to perk up your ears here. You know the Comptons and the Danforths. And I was asking Randy what he cares about, and he said what he cared about, and it happened to be what the organization I was working on behalf of cared about. And I said, how would you feel about making a contribution? And he said, well, I would feel great about it. And I said, well, what level of contribution feels comfortable to you? Are we talking hundreds, thousands, hundreds of thousands? He said, well, probably about $5,000. I said, well, that's wonderful. What would be the best time for them to come and ask you for that money? He said, now would be good. And so we had a check for $5,000 that week. The opportunity to have conversations with people is what creates opportunity to ask what people care about, to ask how they feel. And once again, we'll talk a lot more about this later in the week. But I just wanted to focus your attention on the minuscule sliver of philanthropic giving that we're going after. And many of the people on the call today are from the Rogue Valley in Oregon. We know who the people are, and we can't just go ask them for money. So what else can we do with them? Care about what they care about. Now, I think the Lynn who's on the call is Lynn Jackson. Am I right?
Yeah, that's me. Hello.
Can you talk a little bit about who you are and where you are and what you're raising money for?
Okay, it's good to see you.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you. All right. I am Lynn Jackson in St. Louis, and I am a great-great-granddaughter of Dred Scott, of the Dred Scott decision of 1857. And this Saturday, which is saying that you are a special person, sir, because I am swamped with work.
Yes.
This Saturday, we will be dedicating a brand new monument for Dred Scott at his burial site in Calvary Cemetery. And it replaces one that was 28 inches high, 24 inches wide. He now has a black granite 10 by 10 patio base and a 9-foot high columned monument that has his image and shares his history, and it has wonderful inscriptions and inspirations all over it. And it's just phenomenally awesome. I'm very proud of it, very, very, very pleased. And that is my second major accomplishment for him. We put a statue of Dred Scott and his wife, the first and only in the world, still at the old courthouse in 2012.
Yes,
So,
you did.
yeah, and it's showstopper too. So, God is good. And the next project that we have is to find a home, a permanent place that we can call a Dred Scott Education Reconciliation Center or something as such. We have a beautiful space in a mall right now at Chesterfield, Missouri, which will be torn down 1 year from this month.
Oh my.
So we have 1 year left to stay in this beautiful space that costs less than, I have paid more for car notes than we're paying rent for this space. So
Yeah.
it is a true gift, but it will end. So our next thing is, if we're going to do it, then we want a permanent place, but I need somewhere that's going to outlive me. And that's the next thing, if that's what God wants us to do. And the door is open. So that's who I am.
Well, I'm honored that you could join us, Lynn, and thank you so much. And you and I are going to have side conversations about this after Saturday.
Yes, sir.
I wish I
After
could be there. I'm
Saturday.
so sorry that
I
I'm in
know.
Oregon, and I had hoped that I might be in St. Louis next weekend, but it didn't work out that way. And we have several other people on the call today who are looking to build campus-like opportunities. Dr. Jerry, can you talk a little bit about HRI?
Yes, I'd be happy to. This is such an inspiring conversation that you've initiated. So thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great. HRI is a 30-acre property in Southern Oregon, just outside of Medford, just outside of Ashland. And we're establishing it. It's large enough to be a small campus. And that campus has several different foundation pieces. And one is, a lot of it is based on water. And it is an ancient hot springs used by Native Americans, and also a gathering place where people came, Native Americans came, a place of peace where Natives put down their arms to really celebrate coming together, to celebrate the water. So that's really the background of this 30-acre property, which makes a nice introduction to where we're headed. It's a 30-acre property where people continue to come together around hot water. And around that focus, we've also become an event center, because that really brings people together to celebrate what we have, and that is gardens, where we are collecting seeds, growing food now with about 20 different families. And the gardens are tremendous this year. Stages where we offer large concerts and events, as well as breakout rooms for smaller events and workshops. So we're really developing a retreat-like center. And we also offer housing as well, where this is a unintentional community becoming intentional with opportunities from the county to really have slipped in under the gun. We're offering these things on a rural residential zoning. And so we've really stretched that zoning to become a community that can house about 100 people or so. Excuse me. And that's really where we're headed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you've begun. You've made tremendous progress in the time that you've been there, and you're establishing a legacy. And this is to me a very encouraging sign in the world, and particularly in this group this week, that we have so many people who are seeking to establish a spot that is a designated spot, that is a theme for an emerging possibility of life. And so thank you for speaking up. I wish that we had time today for everybody to do that, but we're going to have more time together this week. I wanted to just to do a shameless plug for our VIP sessions. I'm going to stay online for another hour today to speak individually with each of you who is able to attend the VIP sessions. We do ask for a payment of $97 for the extra 5 hours this week. To come together with me and talk about what you want to talk about. And so I've put the link in the chat. If anyone would like to join us for those VIP sessions, of course, you'd be welcome to do so. And then I also wanted to call your attention to the LinkedIn group, which is an opportunity for you to join with each other and talk with each other on LinkedIn. About what's the project that you're working on, where are you at with it, how has it been successful, where are you stuck, what's working, what's not working. These are wonderful aspects of the art of fundraising. We have to start somewhere. And when you get stuck, when it seems like it's not working, when you're not getting the money that you need for the project that you're working on, that's a place to start from. And of course, many of you, I think, know the wonderful Margaret Mead quote where she said, "Never doubt that a small group of people working together can change the world. In fact, very little else ever has. Carrying the dream forward is a sacred task. Being a person who shares a dream, who puts forth a dream that other people can commit to, is an honor in life. And so we're going to have extra time from 10 until 11 to do that together for those who can stay. And we'll convene again tomorrow to get more deeply into these 7 questions. Okay, Paul, you say care about what people care about. Just exactly how do we do that? And I'm going to share with you some very simple questions that you can use, not as an interview, not like a data gathering activity. You're not doing a survey. Once again, you're creating openings. You're opening archways that allow you to walk together into the Garden of Dreams. David, there was something you wanted to add?
Yes, I just want to check. You mentioned about homework. I went to LinkedIn, the group thing. I don't find any guidance or what to do in terms of, quote, homework.
Yes, I'm going to start with that tomorrow. I'm a big fan of the Scandinavian schools that do not assign homework. So I thought I'd give you a day of rest, maybe because it's Yom Kippur. But not to worry, homework is coming. We're going to engage with the 7 questions and also with the 3 conversations necessary to constitute a dream stream, which is my word for the flowing of a dream from possibility into realization. I talk about the flow of dream streams. That's why I have the Rogue River behind me as an image that I prefer the metaphor of water and flowing water to many of the other popular metaphors like fighting and sports and building things and engineering and all those traditional metaphors. I prefer to call forth a new set of images to describe the flow towards getting the money that we need to accomplish worthwhile projects. So on that note, we're going to transition to the VIP session. I'm going to end this call, and the login information is actually the same. It's an honor system. I put the link in the chat, and you've probably received about 73 text messages and emails inviting you to enroll in the VIP sessions. I would love it if you can join us there, and then we'll have a less structured conversations that's more around exactly what is it that you need to get out of this week. So thank you for joining us, and we will reconvene tomorrow, same time, same place, same link. See you soon.
Bye. Thanks, Paul.